Hello everyone. Welcome back to Shadow Storyteller. Before we begin tonight's tale, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below if you enjoy stories like these. Perfect for those quiet moments before sleep. Now, let me take you to a lonely highway in Nevada, where something happened that I still can't fully explain. It was late in the evening, somewhere around 10:30 p.m. On a chilly night in early November 2018, I was driving south along Highway 93 with my friend Daniel, who had flown in from London just a few days earlier. We had spent the afternoon in Eerie, Nevada, and were heading towards Las Vegas. The road was long, empty, and stretched endlessly into the desert. The kind of drive where the silence begins to press on you, broken only by the steady hum of the car engine and the faint sound of the radio that Daniel had turned down low. The moon was almost full that night, casting a pale glow over the scrub and rocky hills that lined the desert highway. Every so often, the headlights caught the shimmer of animal eyes by the roadside, mostly jackrabbits, sometimes coyotes. Daniel, who wasn't used to the vast emptiness of Nevada, kept glancing out the window as if half expecting something to leap onto the road. And then we saw him. At first, I thought it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But no, there was definitely a man walking along the shoulder of the highway. He was wearing a dark coat, too thin for the cold, and he had his thumbs stuck out in that classic hitchhiker's gesture. Daniel leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. "Is that someone hitchhiking out here? At this hour?" he asked, his voice uneasy. It was unusual, no doubt about that. We hadn't seen another car for nearly 20 minutes, and the nearest town was miles away. But there he was, standing still now, watching as our headlights drew closer. His face came into view, pale and angular, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed strangely hollow under the glow of the high beams. Against Daniel's muttered protest, I slowed the car and pulled over. Something about the way the man stood there made me feel like we couldn't just leave him behind. He stepped forward quickly, almost too quickly, and opened the back door without waiting for an invitation. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed unnaturally loud in the quiet night. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice flat but polite. "Been walking a long way." I glanced at him through the rear-view mirror. His clothes looked oddly outdated, like something from the 1980s. A flannel shirt under his coat, worn-out boots, and a backpack that looked heavier than him. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat, and I could feel the tension settle over us. "Where are you headed?" I asked after a moment, trying to sound casual. "South," the man replied. His eyes never met mine in the mirror. "Just south." That was all he said, nothing more. The road stretched on, the desert swallowing us in silence again. I turned the radio up slightly, but Daniel reached over and switched it off, his jaw tight. He leaned close to me and whispered, almost too softly for me to hear, "There's something wrong about him." I didn't reply, but as the minutes passed, I began to notice it too. The way the man sat so still in the back seat, his hands folded neatly on his lap, his eyes fixed on something beyond the dark horizon. And then, there was the strange detail that sent a chill down my spine. Even though the desert was freezing, I realized there was no visible breath coming from his mouth when he spoke. The miles ticked by. Somewhere near Alamo, with the clock creeping past midnight, he finally stirred. "Do you believe in second chances?" he asked quietly, his voice drifting into the silence like a shadow. Daniel shot me a look, his face pale, but I kept my eyes on the road. I forced a nervous chuckle. Depends on what you mean. The man leaned forward slightly, and I caught his reflection in the mirror. His eyes were darker than before, almost impossibly dark, like there was nothing behind them at all. "That's what I thought," he said, and leaned back again, his lips curling into the faintest smile. At that moment, the air inside the car seemed heavier, colder. Daniel whispered sharply, "Pull over." "I don't like this. Pull over now." But the strange man in the back seat only laughed, a sound so low it barely carried above the hum of the tires. And that's when things truly began to unravel. The tension in the car was unbearable. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than before, the leather warm beneath my palms despite the cold creeping through the vents. Daniel's face was pale in the glow of the dashboard, his lips pressed into a thin line. Neither of us knew exactly what to say. The man in the back seat sat so still, so silent again. It almost felt as though he had dissolved into the darkness, becoming just another shadow among the desert night. Highway 93 stretched endlessly ahead of us, the kind of road that felt as if it had no end, only more black horizon beyond the curve of the earth. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel of vision through the void. Beyond that, nothing but emptiness. And in that emptiness, I kept hearing the man's voice echoing in my head. "Do you believe in second chances?" At 12:30 a.m., after nearly an hour of silence, Daniel couldn't take it anymore. He turned slightly in his seat and spoke. "So," he said with forced cheer, his British accent sharper in the stillness, "what's your name, mate?" The man didn't answer immediately. I caught the flicker of his reflection in the mirror. His head tilted slightly, as though the question had taken him by surprise. Finally he spoke. "James," he said simply. His tone was flat, but there was something unsettling about the way the name fell into the air. Too deliberate, almost rehearsed. Daniel swallowed and nodded. "Well, James, where exactly are you headed? Vegas? Henderson? Maybe Kingman?" James shifted slightly in the seat, the sound of fabric brushing against the upholstery loud in the silence. "Just south," he repeated, the same answer as before. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wide, silently begging for some explanation. But I had none. I tried to focus on the road. My thoughts kept circling, trying to rationalize what was happening. Maybe James was just an eccentric, someone down on his luck, maybe even homeless. People hitchhiked less these days, but it wasn't unheard of. And yet, the way he carried himself, the way his eyes didn't seem to blink, it gnawed at me. Around 1 a.m., as we passed the turnoff near Pahranagat National Wildlife Refuge, James suddenly spoke again. His voice was clearer this time, cutting through the quiet like a knife. "Did you see her?" My grip tightened on the wheel. "See who?" I asked cautiously. "The woman on the side of the road." Daniel snapped his head around, staring at the man. "There's no woman out there. We've been driving for hours. It's just desert." James smiled faintly, the kind of smile that made my stomach knot. "She was there, standing in the sagebrush, watching." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. For a moment, I wondered if maybe I had missed something in the periphery of the headlights. A shape, a shadow. The desert was full of tricks like that. But Daniel shook his head violently. "No, there's nothing out there. Don't play games, mate." James leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on Daniel. Sometimes the dead walk when the night is long enough. The car seemed colder. My breath fogged faintly on the windshield. And I realized, with growing unease, that James still had no visible breath of his own. I pressed the accelerator harder, desperate to reach the glow of Las Vegas that had to be only an hour or so away. But the more I drove, the more the road seemed to stretch, like it was refusing to end. At 1:20 a.m., Daniel suddenly gasped. "Stop the car!" I slammed the brakes, the tires skidding slightly on the asphalt. My heart leapt into my throat. What is it?" "There." Daniel pointed out the passenger window, his voice trembling. I turned my head, and my stomach dropped. There was indeed someone standing on the side of the road. A woman. She was wearing a long dress, white or maybe pale gray, the fabric glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her hair was dark, and it hung loosely over her shoulders. She didn't move, didn't signal, just stood there among the brush, staring at us as if she had been waiting. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes again, she was gone. The desert was empty. James chuckled softly in the back seat. "Now you've seen her." Daniel swore under his breath, turning back to face forward, his hands shaking. No, I didn't see anything. You didn't see anything. That wasn't real. But I had seen her. I knew it. And the sound of James' laugh, low and knowing, made me want to put my foot on the gas and never stop until daylight. The road stretched on, mile after mile. James grew quiet again, but the atmosphere inside the car was poisoned now, heavy with fear and unspoken questions. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had crossed into something we weren't meant to touch, that by picking him up, we had opened a door we wouldn't be able to close. At 2 a.m., the lights of Las Vegas finally appeared faintly on the horizon, shimmering like a mirage. Relief surged through me. I told myself that once we reached the city, we'd let James out, wish him well, and put the entire night behind us. Just another strange story to laugh about later. But James leaned forward again, his face suddenly much closer than I expected, his eyes locked on mine in the mirror. "You can't drop me off in the city," he said calmly. "She won't let you." I felt my heart skip. Daniel turned sharply. "What do you mean? She won't let us? Who the hell is she?" James didn't answer. Instead, he smiled again, that same hollow smile, and whispered a phrase so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. "You'll see soon enough." The lights of the city shimmered ahead, but the closer we got, the more I began to wonder if we were really heading towards safety, or if we had already driven too far into something we couldn't escape. And then, just as the city grew brighter, something impossible happened. When I looked back into the rearview mirror, the seat behind us was empty. James was gone. The door had never opened. The car had never stopped. But the back seat was completely empty, as though he had never been there at all. Daniel saw it too, his face drained of color, his voice cracking. "Where is he? Where the bloody hell did he go?" I couldn't answer. My chest tightened as I scanned the highway behind us. Nothing. No one. Just desert and darkness stretching forever. Yet the coldness lingered in the car. And I swear, as we finally approached the glowing sprawl of Las Vegas, I could still hear James' voice echoing in the silence. "You'll see soon enough." The city lights of Las Vegas glimmered on the horizon like a promise of safety. Neon flickers and sprawling streets grew larger with every passing mile. Yet the relief I expected never came. Instead, the air inside the car remained heavy, colder than it had any right to be. The absence of James in the back seat should have eased us, but it only made things worse. Daniel sat rigidly in the passenger seat, staring at the empty space behind us as though afraid to blink. His hands rested stiffly on his knees, his lips moving silently, whispering to himself. I thought he might be reciting a prayer under his breath, though I couldn't quite make out the words. Maybe, I tried, my voice cracking. Maybe he slipped out when I slowed down back there. Maybe we didn't notice. Daniel turned toward me sharply, his eyes wide, bloodshot from hours of strain. Don't insult me. I was watching him. I never took my eyes off him. The door never opened, mate. He didn't leave. He just disappeared. The word hung in the air like a curse. I wanted to argue, to reason my way out of this nightmare. But the truth was clear. James had vanished without explanation, without sound, without movement. 1 second he was there, and the next he was gone. The hum of the tires filled the silence. A large truck passed us on the opposite lane, its headlights sweeping over the interior of the car. For a brief second, I thought I saw something in the mirror again. A figure in the back seat, pale and still. My heart leapt, but when I blinked, the seat was empty once more. We reached the outskirts of the city just after 3 a.m. The highway widened, street lamps flickered on either side, and billboards advertising casinos and shows lit up the dark. My grip on the steering wheel loosened slightly, though my chest still ached with unease. Daniel finally spoke. Don't drive straight to the hotel. Let's stop somewhere crowded, anywhere with people. I can't go into a dark room right now. I nodded. The first gas station we saw near North Las Vegas Boulevard felt like a sanctuary. The fluorescent lights buzzed harshly, illuminating the pumps, the empty lot, the small convenience store. I pulled in, killed the engine, and let out a long breath. My arms felt like lead. We both got out of the car quickly, as if the vehicle itself had become contaminated with something we couldn't shake. The desert air had lost some of its bite here, but I still shivered. Inside the convenience store, a weary-looking cashier, a young woman with long braids, leaned lazily against the counter, scrolling on her phone. She glanced up briefly as we walked in. Daniel made straight for the coffee machine, his hands trembling as he filled a cup. I lingered near the aisles, pretending to browse, but my mind was still replaying the hitchhiker's last words. Do you believe in second chances? You'll see soon enough. When I finally approached the counter with a bottle of water, the cashier squinted at me. You two look like you've seen a ghost, she said, half joking. I managed a thin smile. Something like that. Her expression shifted slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Highway 93? My blood ran cold. Yes, I answered slowly. Why? She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You're not the first to come through here like that. People talk about it. A man on the road. Some say he's been hitchhiking out there for years. Decades even. Always the same description. Dark hair, old clothes. He asks for a ride south, and then he's just gone. I froze. Daniel, overhearing, nearly dropped his coffee. What are you saying? He demanded. The cashier shrugged, her eyes darting uneasily toward the window, as if afraid he might be standing outside. I'm just telling you what people say. Truckers mostly. They call him the Nevada hitchhiker. Some think he died out there a long time ago. Others think he's looking for something or someone. Her words clawed at me. James, the way he had spoken about second chances, the woman on the side of the road, the smile that didn't reach his eyes. It all clicked into place in a way that left me more unsettled than ever. We left the store quickly. The comfort of neon lights now felt thin, fragile. Daniel refused to get back into the car until dawn, so we sat at one of the plastic tables outside, sipping coffee and water, staring at the empty road leading back into the desert. The night stretched on. When the first pale glow of sunrise touched the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of pink and orange, we finally returned to the car. I was exhausted, but driving into the city streets felt safer now. People were stirring, traffic picked up, and the endless void of the highway was behind us. At least, I thought it was. Our hotel was downtown, not far from Fremont Street. The chaos of neon lights, music, and early morning gamblers should have drowned out any lingering dread. But as we parked in the garage and hauled our bags inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. In the hotel room, Daniel collapsed onto one of the beds, staring at the ceiling. I stood by the window, staring down at the street below. For a few minutes, I almost convinced myself we were safe. And then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps on the door. Daniel shot upright. "Tell me you ordered room service." I shook my head, my mouth dry. We hadn't told anyone our room number. We hadn't even given it at the desk. The knock came again, louder this time. I forced myself to the door, peering through the peephole. At first, I saw nothing. The corridor outside was dim, lined with identical doors and patterned carpet. But then, slowly, a figure came into view. A man, standing just far enough back that I couldn't make out his features clearly. But his posture, the shape of his coat, the stillness of his body. I knew it was him. "James!" I stumbled back from the door, my breath shallow. Daniel saw my face and didn't need to ask. The knocking stopped, but when I gathered the courage to look again, the hallway was empty. We didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every creak of the building, every murmur of voices in the hall made us jolt upright. I kept seeing James in the mirror, in reflections on the window, in the shifting shadows on the wall. And always, his words followed me. "Do you believe in second chances? You'll see soon enough." Even now, years later, whenever I drive lonely highways at night, I can't help but glance at the shoulder of the road, half expecting to see a man standing there, thumb raised, waiting for another ride. Because I know, deep down, we never really left him behind. The sleepless nights in Las Vegas stretched into days, but the sense of unease never left us. Even when the desert sun blazed over the city, even when crowds of tourists filled the streets, there was always that lingering shadow. James, the hitchhiker, the ghost, or whatever he truly was. Daniel refused to leave the hotel room alone. I caught him staring into mirrors, as if expecting to see someone else looking back at him. I wasn't much better. Whenever I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of someone watching. I would wake in the middle of the night certain that the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps was pacing just beyond the door. On the 4th morning, Daniel broke the silence between us. His voice was rough from lack of sleep. "We can't stay here. I want to go back home. London. I don't care how much it costs. I just want out of this bloody place." I didn't argue. I felt the same. We booked flights leaving the following day, direct to Heathrow. The thought of leaving Nevada behind should have brought relief, but I felt only dread, because the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that James wasn't bound to Highway 93. He had found us once in the desert, and then again in the hotel. There was nothing to stop him from following us further. That night, our last in Las Vegas, the air was unusually still. The noise of the casino seemed muted, distant. As we packed, Daniel paused and turned slowly, his face pale. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I froze, listening. Knock. 3 slow raps, just like before, against the window this time. We were on the 11th floor. Daniel's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the carpet. I didn't look at the window. I didn't want to. We packed in silence after that, neither of us daring to speak. The flight the next day was a blur. Crowded terminal, long queues, the hum of jet engines. For a few hours, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could leave it behind. On the plane, Daniel finally dozed off, his head lolling against the seat. I envied him, but as I glanced down the aisle, past the rows of drowsy passengers, I saw a man seated alone near the back. Dark coat, still posture, hands folded in his lap. I blinked, and the seat was empty. By the time we landed at Heathrow, I was trembling. Daniel noticed, but he didn't ask. Maybe he didn't need to. London was no sanctuary. The city was alive with noise and light, but the sense of being followed never faded. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. The first was in Daniel's flat in Camden. We had agreed to meet there a few evenings after our return, trying to distract ourselves with takeaway and cheap lager. It was past midnight when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Not at the door this time, but inside the flat. We froze. The sound came again, this time from the hallway. Daniel grabbed a kitchen knife, his hands shaking. We crept together toward the sound, but when we switched on the light, the hall was empty. The air, though, was colder than it should have been. That night, I returned to my own place in Hackney. I tried to convince myself that it had all been stress, that our minds were tricking us. But at 3:12 a.m., I awoke to see condensation blooming on the inside of my window, words scrawled by an unseen hand. "Do you believe in second chances?" I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. The letters began to fade, vanishing as though they had never been there. The next morning, Daniel called me, his voice raw. "I saw her," he said. "Who?" "The woman. The one from the desert. She was standing at the corner of my street last night, just staring. When I looked again, she was gone." I didn't know what to say. I felt sick, like the ground beneath us was shifting, reality unraveling piece by piece. Weeks passed. The phenomena didn't stop. Sometimes it was James in a reflection. Sometimes the woman by the roadside appearing in a London alleyway. Sometimes it was just the sound of footsteps pacing in an empty room. It was Daniel who finally suggested we dig deeper. If he's real, whatever he is, then there must be a story behind him. People don't just appear like that. So we searched through late-night internet rabbit holes, newspaper archives, and old Nevada folklore forums. We pieced together fragments. In the late 1980s, a man named James Mallory had vanished along Highway 93. A hitchhiker, last seen heading south, thumb raised, carrying a worn backpack. Some said he was fleeing trouble. Others said he was chasing after a lover who had disappeared in the desert years before. His body was never found. The woman, too, had her tale. In the 1960s, a young woman named Clara had died in a car accident on that same stretch of road. Witnesses claimed to see her wandering the desert at night, her white dress glowing under the moon. It felt as though the two were connected somehow. Two restless souls tied to that endless road, bound together by grief, loss, or something darker. And for reasons we couldn't understand, they had latched onto us. The more we learned, the worse it became. Daniel's health declined. He looked gaunt, hollow-eyed, like the life was being drained from him. He confessed to me that James came to him in dreams now, sitting at the foot of his bed, whispering endlessly about second chances. I wasn't spared either. I began seeing Clara more often, her figure appearing in crowds, at train stations, reflected in shop windows. She never spoke, but her eyes followed me, filled with a sorrow I couldn't shake. One evening, as the autumn rain fell over London, Daniel called me in a panic. "He's here," he hissed. "In my flat. I can hear him. He's knocking." The line went dead. I rushed across the city, drenched by the downpour, heart hammering in my chest. When I arrived at Daniel's building, the lights in his flat were dark. I pounded on the door, shouting his name, but there was no answer. Finally, I forced the door open. The flat was silent. The air was icy, colder than the November rain outside. I stepped cautiously inside, calling out for Daniel. No response. And then I saw it. On the wall of his bedroom, scrawled in what looked like condensation or frost, were the same words I had seen on my window weeks before. "Do you believe in second chances?" The room was empty. Daniel was gone. I never saw him again. It has been years since that night, yet the haunting never ended. I moved, changed jobs, even left London for a time, but the shadow always follows. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of James in a crowd, standing perfectly still as the world moves around him. Sometimes Clara appears by the roadside when I drive at night, her pale dress glowing in the dark. And always, without fail, comes the knock. 3 slow raps, no matter where I am. I don't know what they want. I don't know why they chose us. But I know this. Second chances aren't what they seem. And if you ever find yourself driving down Highway 93 in Nevada, late at night, and you see a man by the roadside with his thumb raised, keep driving. Because once he's in your car, he never truly leaves. The desert around us eventually began to fade into the pale light of dawn. The shadows that once stretched long and ominous across the highway dissolved into the soft glow of a new morning. The silence inside the car was heavier than the endless night we had just passed. Each of us caught in our own thoughts, unwilling to break the fragile balance of calm that had finally settled. When we finally dropped the hitchhiker at a small diner near Eerie, he simply gave us a faint smile, as though he knew more than he should, and disappeared into the dim interior. We didn't ask his name, and he didn't ask ours. The door swung shut behind him, leaving us staring at the empty seat in the back, wondering whether he had been real at all. Highway 93 stretched before us once again, silent and endless. As the sun rose higher, painting the desert gold, the night's strangeness began to feel like a dream. Yet the unease lingered in the back of our minds, refusing to leave. We drove on, our eyes fixed on the road, each mile pulling us further from that unsettling encounter, but never erasing it. Sometimes, even now, when I find myself driving lonely roads at night, I catch myself glancing into the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see him sitting there again, quiet, watchful, waiting.